Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Trying to situate the camera in a way where it's not like too high up. Anywho, happy Tuesday. I actually made a video the other day that I promised I was going to post for the Halloween month of October about hauntings and witches and the history of the witch trials and different things that are near and dear to me. However, I had some technical difficulties uploading the video, so I'm re-recording it today on Tuesday since I decided to take today off from work. Yesterday, actually, I wasn't feeling good last week. There's some sick people at work. Friday, I wasn't feeling good. I left a little bit early, and then yesterday I was just drained. It's not that I'm getting the sinus allergy stuff, but I feel very heavy, so I think I needed a lot of sleep and stuff. So today, I actually asked my boss, because I have plenty of time off, if I could have today off. So I'm home with the puppies today, and I'm so happy I took today off. I really think my body needed it. I was sitting here this morning after my roommate left because he's gone for the rest of the week, and I actually felt guilty for not doing chores. But yeah, anyways, I fed the fish and the doggies and myself. So okay, let me start this over again. Hi to my subscribers, the ones that have been with me since the beginning, and new subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm so grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for all the comments and people who have been contacting me from my YouTube channel, who have also added my Instagram, Twitter, and my Facebook page, and have also visited my website. It really means the world to me. I can't even express to you how grateful I am for all of you. And if I could just reach one person, which I've reached several that have the same issues or have gone through the things that I've gone through, if I can help you to make it a little bit easier, then so be it. That's what I'm here for. So please don't forget to hit like on the video that you're watching right now. I know a lot of people forget that, but that helps a lot with my channel to get the word out. So even though it's not about the subscriber number, it is about the subscriber number on YouTube in order to get your voice heard. So I promised the other day that I was going to do urban legends, which I am, and then I was going to do horror witchy stories and history of the witches and stuff like that. And me being a practicing natural witch, as well as a medium, spirit, communicator, and other things, which I don't really like labels, but that's what I resonate with. I've been like that since I was a little child. I believe in Mother Earth. I believe in fall is my favorite holiday because of pumpkins and the leaves turning, and it's just, I think it's because the veil is so open for the dead, and it's just a very intense time for me. Now, first, let me start this video by saying I'm not here to offend or insult anybody in regards to my feelings towards the witch trials or what I feel is true and what is being portrayed. This is my personal opinion from my personal experiences and my gifts and my past life memories and different things. So, and what spirit shows me. So, just so you know, I am not trying to offend anybody. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. We can agree to disagree, but please do not do any vile or negative comments below. You're just going to be blocked from my channel because my channel is about getting out to those who can resonate with what I'm talking about. So I started this research because I was remembering stories from when I was a child, because there's several things that are a huge part of my life from my childhood and people that I've grown up with that I'm still friends with. Two specific men that I'm still friends with from when I was little both understand a lot of this. A lot of people from the South where I am don't get it, but I mean, they get the love of Halloween, but they don't get the stories because, you know, everywhere you live, there's different stories, just like urban legends. And one of the things was the witch trials and what you were told as a kid about the hauntings of the witch Goody Bassett, and then Ichabod Crane's Sleepy Hollow story, the Headless Horseman, which is huge, um, and other stories as well. So I decided to, even though I know a lot and I've done a lot of research over the years on many of these subjects, I decided to do some research on what was out there in regards to the true, where the witch trials really started. Because for those of you who don't know, Salem is not where it started, and Salem is not where it began. A lot of people get that confused because that's the town where it's settled, right? And that's where there's a lot of tourism. It's kind of like New Orleans, right? There's a lot of tourism from stories that you tell about vampires here. Well, I hate to burst your bubble if you're a huge Salem fan, which I am too. I love visiting Salem. I've been there twice in my life. However, I don't agree with, not to insult the museum, but the stories that they tell are very inaccurate. They're accurate to an extent, but loosely accurate. So, like, the terms and the things that happen that are in the history books are, like, their books, are true. I don't want you to understand what I'm saying. However, everything is sensationalized, right? New Orleans does the same with their tours. They sensationalize. Salem sensationalizes. And even though some of the stories are very true, many things that are associated with the stories that they tell are not true. So, first off and foremost, the witch trials did not start in Salem, Massachusetts. They actually started in New England. So, I did a research paper. Well, I did research, I should say, in a paper myself the last week about this because I have a lot of information stuck in here, and then I have other information that I learned that I got more information about. So I felt that I would share it here on my channel. So, what the witch trials mean to me, let's just put it that way, as a practitioner. I honor the witches every year. Every day in October, I light a candle at night, a white candle, for the witches that died at the stake and the witches that were hung and burned and their families were tortured, all in the name of religious zealots who burned them and hung them and tortured them for being natural witches and for wanting to help people with their gifts. And so that's why I decided to do this video. Now, I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash about this. I also have a past life memory. I have had it 3 times in my life, and it was pretty intense, and I'll probably talk about it another time if someone is interested in hearing it. However, it really, really affected me in a surreal way, and so that's why I honor them. I honor them every month in my life because that's who I am. But October is huge for that, and so I just keep lighting a candle every night, and I burn sage. So let me share some of the information. I want to see if I could adjust this camera to the point where I could read it and you can hear me and still see me. So give me a moment. Okay. Let's see if I can find the documents. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. So when you think of the witch trials in the States, we often think of Salem, like I said, which didn't sit right for me all my life, right? I just didn't understand. Like, I kept asking myself when I visited it as a child, and I also visited it a year before I moved here from New England to Louisiana. It never sat right in my soul. Like, what made everyone see Salem as the area where witches were burned, and those witches were more important than someone in another state? It it really affected me in a way that was more than just a normal person who's interested in such a story. So I delved around and I did some research about it because obviously the witch that we grew up knowing stuck in my head, the name. So I did some research about it. And so, yeah, let me just read a little bit of what I wrote, and then we'll get into the video. So what I wrote was, why did we settle as a society on just Salem when many years prior, people, especially women, including men, were being burned at the stake and hung for merely being true to their nature, collecting herbs and fruits and utilizing Mother Earth as it was intended to heal us as a whole, our human bodies that we are thrown into at birth. As I often say, from the moment that we are thrown into our human meat sacks, our spirit is merged with our bodies, our human bodies. The battle begins. Usually, right before puberty is when we fight ourselves internally. And what I mean by that is those who decide to follow the path of being an empath or even a witch or something different than society governs normal. So, for those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in Connecticut, where there are many stories that we all grew up in Connecticut, which were both horrid and ghoulish. Many of them which you would consider urban legends. Based on a little bit of truth and blown up, right? Sensationalism, just like I said in the beginning of this video. As I started, as I stated about the witch trials, they started way before what happened in Salem. Connecticut witch hunts were the first and most horrid in New England, yet we focus as a society on Salem. Why is that? Why do not many talk about the Connecticut atrocities? Connecticut events happened between 1647 and 1697. Witchcraft in Connecticut was like a crime of robbery or murder in the world today. If you committed such a thing, robbery or murder, or witchcraft, you were like today, arrested and tried. Today, the idea seems sensational, right? But it was not like that in the 17th century. Think about that back there. Think about how people were, how closed-minded people were back then, how easily it was to blame somebody for such a thing if you didn't like them, how they did not take that to their death with them. If someone doesn't like you, I mean, they could just say you're a witch, and you know, it's just crazy. Um, at that time as well, in the 17th century, it's well documented in a lot of the history that people did believe in the devil walking the earth, and that he was taunting and luring those who were weak and did not follow God or faith. So for some reason along the line in the 17th century, or maybe even before that, religious people felt, or Puritans felt, that those who didn't follow God or faith walked with the devil. And so maybe that's why in a lot of the movies that we watch in the world over the 30 years 40 something years, I mean, since the day I started watching movies, why so many movies with witches are portrayed as Satan worshippers or devil worshippers, which, a lot of people try to say that, oh, well, it is true to an extent, because if you don't have a white witch, then you have a witch that follows Satanism or dark path. So not to offend anybody, but that's bullshit. There's no such thing as a white witch or a dark witch. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you right now. No, I don't need to follow a coven or be part of a coven to show that I am a witch or that I practice witch magic. I don't need a support group to support me in that. Now, there are people in this world that need that, and that's fine. I'm not judging you. But for me, and for me alone, most witches that are natural witches who are born into this from their ancestry are both dark and light. They balance both, and they are solitary. Now, we don't need a whole group to be in a coven. However, there are people that we consider our sisters that we will work with. However, we do not need to. So I just want to put that out there. During what I call the genocide, because that's what I call it, which is like myself, even women and men were executed, both. It was not sexist, right? Alse, which is pronounced Alice, A-L-S-E, Young, was from Windsor, Connecticut. And when I was researching witchcraft in Connecticut, this is what I found about her. And so I thought I would share a little bit of information about her. I'm just trying to figure out how to scroll this so I could read it to you. So she was hung in Hartford on the date of May 26, 1647. She was in history the first witch execution to take place in New England, the New World, what's called the New World. Most that were executed for such things were women, but there are some cases of a handful of couples, which obviously would include men. A few of them were actually executed together. So imagine that feeling back then of being executed with your spouse, being tortured, being told you were evil, even though maybe you weren't, maybe you weren't religious, but you were just trying to help, right? It's just baffling to me. You can find books in Connecticut, on Connecticut, anywhere, which they talk about witch trials. Um, a lot of them have no merit. They have no background. They have no meat. They're just stories. They're just stories to sensationalize things. Just like Salem, some of the stories, not all of them. What I mean by that is that they were written just to have like a fictional book, right? The story of ooh and ah and the scary moment. So I was looking for some meat and bones to truth to do this video. I really was. And with the way you can find tons of information on the internet, you cannot always trust what you're getting on the internet 100%. And I hope you all know that. Like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google, Yahoo, any of the sources that you use when you're researching things like this, even the library, which I've gone to the library several times here. A lot of the sources are inaccurate or sensationalized or stretched from the truth. It's really hard to find information that's accurate. So it's kind of like when you do an online research paper for college, right? You need to source and back up your information. That's basically how I went into doing this research. So I just looked at a little bit of stuff, asked a few questions, and here I am. I did find some information on a man in Connecticut, and I don't know if he still resides in New England, called Walter Woodward. He's fascinated with the subject, and he's done papers and seminars discussing such things. They say he's the closest to an expert on this topic. Lectures he has given at colleges must have been really interesting. Like, I would love to sit in something like that. There are scattered bits of information on the internet about his lectures, but not very much. Like, no meat to it, right? Just, hey, he does these lectures, and this is the date that it was, it happened. I find that fascinating. I remember, for those that don't know me very well, the Warrens, which you hear about them all the time. I met both of them when I was 17. They used to do in Connecticut, because they live in Connecticut and their nephew lives in Connecticut. They used to do auditorium things around the Halloween time, sensationalizing the investigations they did and showing the Raggedy Ann doll and different things. And he would talk about his house, his museum in his house with all these evil things. And she would talk about their investigation of Amityville and different things. So I met them when I was 17, very briefly. I remember it specifically because I went up to her. It was basically when you're leaving the auditorium, shaking their hand, saying thank you. And I actually went up to her, and she could see right through me. And her and her husband were very nice. Her husband had similar abilities like myself. You could see it in him. And she said to me to let the door slide open. And I'll never forget that. She said that to me, and I never really understood it until probably 5 years ago, when I really realized how intense my abilities are. Anyways, well, then going on, not to get too far off the story of what I wrote about, I met her and him again, I'd say about 12 years later, and actually was able to stay behind and actually sit down with them and talk with them. And I sat and talked with them for about 15 minutes, and it's a lifelong memory of mine that I will never forget, and really opened my eyes to my path in this life. And I really respect them, and I was sorry to hear when her husband passed. I have my own feelings about, when you delve in things like that, if you don't protect yourself to the extent that things like that can happen to you health-wise. So anyways, so that was huge in Connecticut. So it's always been huge in Connecticut about different supernatural, paranormal, witchy things. So I found out when I was doing this research, finding all these scattered bits of information on the witch trials and witchcraft and different things like that there was a child's book written that was, they think suspiciously, was about a Connecticut witch. It's called The Witch of Blackbird Pond, and they say it was published in 1958, and they say it was inspired by the Weathersfield witchcraft history. Apparently, it was popular. I'd love to get my hands on one. I wonder if they sell it on eBay or something. I would really love that. It was used in language arts curriculum in middle schools around the country then. Many who did reviews on the book say it's a great story. However, greatly inaccurate, a lot of people said, which for me is not surprising. It's all about sensationalism, like I said in the beginning of this video. And so, if they can sensationalize something, they will do it. I mean, it's about ratings, it's about getting people to buy things, and that's basically what it is. It's the same when people discuss paranormal shows with me and my paranormal activity with several groups and my investigation experience and going on my own and stuff. You can sensationalize that as well to get the word out, to get your name out there to make tons of money. I mean, it's proven. I do remember the stories of our Connecticut governor, John Winthrop, and I couldn't remember his name, so I had to look it up, but it's John Winthrop Jr. He saved the lives. I remember how they told the story that he saved the lives of several accused witches of witchcraft. And him and his wife, who brought the Connecticut witch trials to an end, they actually pushed for it because it was so horrible when you do the little research on it and bits and pieces of how horrendously violent it was when they kill them, that they took it to an end, right? They completed and ended the executions, and they did all that 30 years before the Salem witch murders. Isn't that crazy? 30 years before Connecticut was doing witch burnings, before Salem ever did. So why are we focusing on Salem as the main place? It'll forever, ever, ever cause me confusion, but it's all good. Like I said earlier, I've been there twice. I don't feel the stories they tell at the museum are accurate. Like I said before, they actually made me angry the last time I went because they were telling them, and you could tell they obviously were stretching the truth about hauntings and spirits and stuff, just like they do here in New Orleans about the vampires and the story about Madame Laveau and the stories about the LaLaurie Manson and the stories about uh, all kinds of different places here. Some of them are so stretched out, and some are just crazy where you think, really, do people really believe in that? I mean, it's you can't even find it in the history books or in any writings or anything. So how are you going to prove it? And yes, I'm a huge skeptic, even though I have these abilities. So I actually love going to see and speak to spirits. So the activity there in Salem was endless for me. The truth is always shown to me when I'm around places like that. So you can have someone telling the story and I'm being shown the real truth if it's not accurate. I've always had that gift, even with people. It's that something you think people would like. Oh, I said, maybe I should start doing videos of me going to the city to tell you stories. I wrote this down. Sorry about that. I wrote, maybe I should start doing videos of me going to the city to tell stories. Like go down to New Orleans and tell you the story in front of the LaLaurie Mansion, or going to the Sultan House in front of it or around it to tell you the stories, or going to a building in New Orleans and telling you the stories. But I think people already do that on YouTube. But if you're interested in me doing something like that, let me know. I have a friend that goes down to the city all the time from my paranoia group that we're not together at the moment. But yeah, just let me know. So this person, this John Winthrop Jr., they say he wasn't a politician. He was known to most people as a politician, but he wasn't just a politician. He was actually a physician and, believe it or not, an astronomer. And they say there were rumors going around that he was an alchemist, which fascinates me even more. Absolutely fascinates me. Think about that, an alchemist in the what was it? The 1700s, or the 30 years before Salem. I'm trying to remember what year that was. Let's see, 1647, I think it was, they said. That's crazy. Um, he knew, like many of us know now, that everything in life is not as cut and dry as the Puritans back then and the religious people now feel. Not everything is unexplainable. Not everything that's unexplainable was caused by witchcraft or the devil. Apparently, he worked very hard to make Connecticut leaders. Excuse me, I'm thirsty. It's God, I lost my place again. Apparently, he worked very hard to make Connecticut leaders understand this concept at such a difficult time. I'm sorry. I'm moving around as I'm briefly reading my notes because I wrote just an outline. So I'm not reading all of this from my paper, but I wanted to get key points out to you when doing this video so that I could capture what I really wanted to show you and talk to you about. So for me, people often ask me, what do you think about this? What do you think about when they used to burn people? And what do you think about, like for instance, if you haven't seen the movie Season of the Witch, it's a B-rated movie that didn't really get good ratings, but it's one of the major movies that I love with the guy who plays Hellboy and with Nick Cage, and I absolutely adore the movie because it shows, if you watch it, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it shows as it's a witch causing the plague and causing evil and torment, and it's really not a witch. So I find it a really fascinating story. For me personally, I'm ashamed that these times in history are a period of superstition, patriarchy, religion-fueled repression, and oppression to anyone who didn't follow the norm. Like, I feel like it's still that way now, except people that don't believe in people like me hide it a little bit better. Just like we have racists that hide it, right? I mean, the Ku Klux Klan, what do? They wear masks. Many of them won't show their real faces. It's the same as religious people who don't like people like me. I mean, it's just one of those things we have to live with. Think about this. This is a main thing I thought about when I was looking at this research. More women and men have been burned at the stake in history, and you can research this, through all the burnings, than all the poor Jewish people that were tortured and murdered during the Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying the Holocaust wasn't horrible. I'm really not. I mean, any atrocities like that, and the concentration camps and the tattooing of their wrists and the horrible things that were done. I'm not saying ours was worse, the witches were worse. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, think of the numbers of people that have been killed in the name of God, in the name of power. It really, really, in the name of men. It's just a sad thing to think about. It really, really is. So, if you research the death of this girl that I mentioned earlier, Elsa Young, she supposedly was the first witch in colonial America that was executed. They don't really have a lot of information about her. She's sometimes referred to as Akasa Young or Alice Young. And the history books, like if you dig through different things, the history, she was born in 1600 and resided in Windsor. She married John Young and gave birth to a daughter, Alice. She was accused of said witchcraft in 1647 and hanged in Hartford, like I said earlier, in May. In front of everyone, like a spectacle, like you would think, right? Just like in the movies. 30 years later, it was shown her daughter was then accused of the same in Springfield, Massachusetts. Although it does not show she hanged, they never said how she was executed. However, I feel when I was doing this research, my intuitive self showed me that she was burned at the stake, because during that time, that would frighten and scare those who thought of such things to do, right? If someone was thinking about being a witch or is a witch in their heart, but wanted to do that themselves, but they hid it from people, right? So it's basically living in the closet. That's what I like to say. I joke around about it, but it's really in serious when I say I'm out of the closet, because a lot of people don't respect people that are witches. Hanging wasn't sensationalized enough for 30 years later, but that's just my opinion. In the world today, you hear of countless stories of those wrongly accused, those who are desperate to close a case and have someone to blame for such vile events, that many go to jail that are innocent. We know this, right? This happens all the time. When you're poor and less educated and you don't have anybody in society to help you, and you're deemed guilty due to coincidental things, and you lose proof to say the least. Like, meaning you have no proof that you didn't do it, but then have no proof really to hold you to it. And back then, think about it. Back then, they didn't have the things we have now. So you basically threw you out in the center of town and they burned you or hung you. I mean, that's just the truth about it. And in my mind, I'm thinking in my head of a story of someone I follow on Facebook or Twitter that was wrongly accused and got out of jail. And for the life of me, I'm having a brain fart. With the sickness, I've been having sinus, not like allergy sinus, but like clouded head and, dizziness, vertigo. I'm also having a lot of problems with foggy brain. So I'm like thinking of what I want to tell you, but I can't remember what I want to tell you. So I apologize if I'm jumping around. So it's basically sad to say that if you look like a witch, you act like a witch, you do things like a witch or what they consider a witch, you were killed like a witch. And so that's basically what the stories are about if you do the research and you look around. So you're a natural witch like me. I'm a healer. I consider myself part Native American because I am, but also in past lives. I have a soul and a heart that look for natural Mother Earth ways of healing people to help others, as well as intuitive abilities, moving energy, Reiki, as well as my connection with the other side and spirit who help to guide me. My ancestor, grandfather, who's a Native American who wears a full headdress that is always around me. People that have done readings for me have seen him. He is part of my life, like you physically would be in front of me. That is just part of it. If someone didn't like you because of who I am, like what I just described back then, or if you were promiscuous with men, guess what? They say, hey, that person's a witch, and you would be burned or hung. That's just how it was. It's kind of like when you're in high school, right? And people gossip, people believe the stories of things that aren't true. It's just part of life. One of the names that comes to mind when I think of witchcraft back then, when I was doing this research, that's not in Salem, was the Goody Bassett witch, which as a kid, we always heard stories about her. So I try to remember. They talked about the Witch's Rock and things when I was a kid, and when I went to Sterling House Camp, and when I went to middle school, we used to talk about it. So I kind of tried to dug around, and all I could find was 1651, and it said one of the few witches they said confessed to her crimes of being a witch. She criticized them for refusing non-church members the right to vote and for firing her husband for refusing to keep a ladder in their home as required by law. People started to connect coincidences after they moved there, such as sickness, hallucination, and different things. And due to the winter being so cold and bitter that year, they were convinced that because of her, those wolves that were coming around were more bold and they were her familiars if she was a witch. So, did you know that they tested? This was a huge fact that I found. Did you know that they tested to see if you're a witch, then by the water test? So, what they would do is they would tie bound you and immerse you in water. Think about this, like physically, emotionally, and visualize this. And they would put you in the water. And if you sank, you were innocent. And if you floated, you were guilty. How crazy is that? That just baffles me. If you had marks on your body, they were witch marks. So like if you woke up in the morning and you were one of these people accused and they brought you in, you had marks on your body. Let's say if you have night fears or you scratched yourself or whatever, you were a witch. They gave her the sentence to hang her outside the village palisade. They say she admitted to being a witch. However, I never found anything in all the research I've done over the years that she did. And just like to me, that the Bible by men, there's no proof of such things. Only man's perception is of such things. And so I'm sorry if I offend you. For those of you who follow God, I completely respect you. I believe God and I believe in Jesus. I grew up strict Roman Catholic almost my entire life. That path is not for me. However, I feel it's a fear-based religion, and no insults to anybody, but this is my thoughts and my path. So please don't leave in derogatory comments under my video. I have plenty of friends that are Baptist, Catholic, Christian that respect me, and I respect them. This is just my channel, and this is my view, and this is my place to talk. So they gave her a sentence to hang her outside the village, right? And so basically, they killed her because supposedly she said she was a witch. So, and you hear stories about, ooh, Goody Bassett haunts over here because she's buried under the highway, and there's a rock in Connecticut and Stratford where you can go to that supposedly she haunts. There's always stories like that every city, state you go to of different things. So I wanted to share a fact before I end this video, and I really, really hope I didn't babble too much, and I hope that you enjoyed this. So this is what I wanted to share with you. The Holy Bible was brought from England by Reverend Blackman to Stratford's First Congregational Church. And he said this: "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Think about this. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. In 1642, the General Court passed a law that said, if a man or woman be a witch, hath or consult with a familiar spirit, like the wolves I mentioned earlier, and they shall be put to death. The Malleus Maleficarum, or hammer of the witches, was a well-known tool in witch hunts. And I will share a picture of that at the end of this video. I will try to figure out, or maybe I will put it in the beginning of this video. It's crazy, some of the torture stuff I saw. You can't get that out of your head when you see it. So I hope I didn't babble too much. This video is going on 36 minutes. It'll probably be like a 45-minute video. But I wanted to put this information out there for those of you who don't want to do the research or don't know where I come from. New England is a huge place for Halloween, the witch trials. One of the huge stories, the Headless Horseman, Ichabod Crane, all these things. A lot of us people who grew up there and heard all these stories. I mean, just the Lady in White in Monroe, the Lindley House, which I want to talk about in another video. Which my dad knows a lot about the Lindley House. I used to live in a house in Stratford down the street from Frog Pond. When I was a baby, my mom, briefly, because my mom and dad moved to, they lived on the north side of Stratford by Bunnell. They lived there briefly. This is before I was born. They lived in this really nice house there, and then I was told they moved to this other tiny house in Connecticut down the street from the Frog Pond, which apparently was haunted when I was a kid. I wasn't born yet, but I used to drive by the house all the time as a teenager, and my dad had told me one day, and I wonder if he even remembers this, that, that house is haunted and you used to live in there. Not me, like they used to live in there. And then I moved to Dover Street in Connecticut in Stratford, and then Taft Street. And Taft Street was the first, and then Dover Street was the second. Dover Street was haunted, the house that I lived in. It's a 3-floor house. I don't know if it's still that way, but it was haunted. And I remember as a kid seeing the Lady in White floating across the room. She died. She was killed and murdered in the house. I never really realized why. Seeing ghosts for many years of my life as a child, I never knew they were ghosts because they look solid like people. So, you just thought, oh, there's some lady here. Oh, okay, whatever. You're just a kid. You don't get it. So I hope this video finds you interested. I hope you found it interesting. I'm sorry for, I was reading off my little notes, an outline just to kind of keep me on basis so I could share the information that I researched. And I'll get better in more videos. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It's really, truly hard to find detailed information about the witch trials because, let's just face it, back then they didn't really keep a lot of documentation on things. And it all comes from the perception of the person writing it, right? So it may not be 100% accurate. So just remember that when you read about things. And I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. And look for my next video. I think I'm going to do an urban legend next from Connecticut. I was thinking about talking about some of the haunts that I went to as a kid, so we'll see. Anyways, I hope this video you liked. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button. If you are not a subscriber and you just came to my channel and you found this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I'd love for you to be a subscriber. And don't forget, if you want to be notified of new content or when I go live, which I'm thinking of doing a little bit of a live question and answer later today, let me know what you think by hitting like or comment. You hit the notification bell, and then it'll tell you how frequently to get notified. If you only hit it once, it's not going to tell you every time. But if you hit it, I think it's the second one, it'll show you. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.